Over the coming days, the country will fall silent as we remember those who have lost their lives in military service. In Thame, some have decided to go one step further. They've begun a 4-year journey to visit the 213 graves of those from the town who were killed in World War I, wherever in the world they may be. We'll be following them as they travel to France and Belgium to remember those soldiers buried there. In the first of our special reports, Victoria Cook has been to find out more about the project.
It stood in the centre of Thame for nearly 100 years, remembering those who made the ultimate sacrifice. Now, Thame wants to rediscover who these men were and thank them.
It's important that they're just not names on the memorial. That's the big thing. They're just not names there. They do have a life, they did belong to the town. The names that are on there, when they created the war memorial, there had to be someone shouting for them. There had to be someone said, "Don't forget my Johnny," you know. And for certain people have moved away from the town, and there was no one at the time shouting for them. We're going to be shouting for them.
213 men, all from Thame. They left Oxfordshire to serve their country, and they never came home. The aim of this project is for people from Thame to visit each of the graves of the men from here who died during World War I. They're buried all over the world, including Iraq and Libya. A cross like this will be placed at each of the graves as a way of the community showing that they remember them.
There's a cemetery there, that one there, see that?
It all started as a simple conversation in the pub.
It's into Arras to deliver to the Arras Memorial.
Now Mike Dyer and David Bretherton are seeing the idea come alive.
I think it has reinforced my faith in the local community. Thame is a wonderful place, Thame is full of wonderful people, and to know that they're behind what we're doing, they agree with what we're doing, is its own reward.
It's thought it's one of the biggest World War I memorial projects to ever be organised by a community. David and Mike have managed to secure £23,000 to make it happen. That's money from the local authorities and the lottery. One of the main aims of this project is to really involve the community here in Thame. Well, I'm about to join around 40 of them as they head to northern France. When they're there, they'll be visiting the war graves and laying crosses on around 40 graves. I'll be bringing you their stories next week. Victoria Cook, BBC South Today. It's a remembrance project like no other. A community group from Thame has begun a 4-year journey to visit all 213 graves of those from the town who died in military service. They're buried all over the world, so some of the visits will be challenging, places like Iraq and Libya. Some men died at sea, so plans are underway for wreaths to be left on the ocean. I was able to join the Thame Remembers group as they took on one of the biggest parts of this project, to take 40 people from Thame to commemorate those who fell during World War I in France and Belgium. When they left Thame 100 years ago, they could never have known what awaited them. Death would surround them. Many would never come home. Now the people of Thame have come to the battlefields to commemorate each one who didn't.
He served as an apprentice and a compositor with the Thame Gazette, and in August 1917, having been promoted to corporal, he was fighting in the Third Battle of Ypres.
Each grave is being left with a marker, a way for the town to say thank you. In each of the cemeteries that we visited, where it's been possible, the person laying the cross or the wreath has had a personal connection to the person who's died. Now, that could be anything from an actual relative to one lady on this trip who currently does the shopping for the descendant of the man who died during World War I.
I think the very fact that you come to a cemetery anyway is quite an emotional process. But when you come here looking for somebody specific, that is a man from Thame who died, then that makes it a lot more personal. And for a few people on our trip, it is somebody more specific than that. It is actually a relative of theirs.
You know, I sort of came out here thinking, oh, it would be really interesting, but I've actually found it really moving. and this is really moving, and I'm really glad we could do it.
I think it's marvellous. I just wish more towns did it. I think it'd be really interesting, especially from family history side of things.
We live in number 46 and then you find there's someone we're remembering that used to live in number 44.
Yeah.
And you think, crikey,
Yeah.
that really brings it home to you.
The Last Post at Menin Gate, played every night since World War I by the local firemen. A chance for Thame to remember 8 men who fell here.
They shall grow not old, as we that are left grow old. Age shall not weary them, nor the years condemn. At the growing down of the sun, and in the morning, we will remember them.
Tomorrow our special series will continue on Thame Remembers. We'll hear more about those men from the town who gave their lives during World War I. Well, this week we've brought you stories from a special project called Thame Remembers. It's a 4-year international mission to visit every grave of those from the town who've died in military service. Ahead of Armistice Day, I was able to join 40 people from the town as they visited the battlefields in France and Belgium to discover the stories behind these men who made the ultimate sacrifice. They were sons and brothers, they were fathers, but many of them never saw their families in Thame again. Richard Bowdry's uncle was one of them. He left behind a twin brother. His name now on the memorial at Thame Cot in Belgium.
And I thought, Uncle Fred's brother, you know, and then of course they got in contact with us and I was over the moon with it, and I am today.
Does the feeling that it gave you surprise you that it would hit you like this?
Yeah.
Second Lieutenant Henry Bernard had been head boy at Lord William's Grammar School. He was wounded by shrapnel in Gallipoli. Despite that, he was still sent to the front line at the Somme. He died aged just 22. Second Lieutenant Eric Rose went to school with him, but he was younger. He was awarded the Military Cross for taking charge of his company when his commander was killed. Another officer wrote to his family with the news.
Let me express to you and all members of the family my most heartfelt sympathy with you in your loss, in which I share your sorrow. I think that the resistance of Second Lieutenant E. Rose MC and his company, when cut off from support and surrounded, will be one of the most treasured memories in the history of the battalion.
Retelling these men's stories is at the heart of the Thame Remembers project.
Age shall not weary them, nor the years condemn.
I've seen people in tears, I've seen people with smiles, and you know, they're all appreciative, and they're all appreciative individuals laying crosses and individuals laying wreaths. They've all sort of felt privileged, I think is another word I've heard used, privileged to be here and represent our town in doing these acts of remembrance.
The project still has 2 years to go, and there's many graves left to visit. The organisers now need more volunteers to take crosses out to any of the remaining countries they can get to. This week we've been bringing you the stories of a unique community remembrance project in Oxfordshire. It's called Thame Remembers. It's a 4-year journey to lay a special cross at every grave of those from the town who died in military service. It's a big challenge because the graves are all over the world, some in Iraq and Libya. Well, I travelled with the group from Thame as they visited the graves in France and Belgium. For one man on the trip, it was a chance to visit his granddad's grave, a journey he'd hoped to make all his life.
I usually go to the Remembrance Day ceremony at the War Memorial and think about him. I've always considered very, very important. I did this. I made this visit to see my grandfather's grave. It's always been there, something I must do. The only memory I have of my granddad is the fact that my father had his picture, and I knew that he died in 1916 during the First World War, but it was just that picture, and of course my gran being a widow. He was a career soldier. He went to India with the artillery. He then went from India to the Dardanelles landing in Gallipoli. He survived that, came home, and then from home he went to France. He was in the artillery, the big guns, and he was sore wounded and died of his wounds. And on one small bit of paper I found, it said in brackets after that, killed in action, gas. So it's the first time I knew, very recently, that he died from the effects of gas. So I've asked the question, well, what about a gas mask? And somebody said to me, if you're firing big artillery, there's no way could you wear a gas mask. You know, you had no side vision, very hot and sweaty, you couldn't wear it very long. It was a very heavy job, so they couldn't wear gas masks. Not practical, apparently.
Stephen was present at the Dardanelles landings in 1915, where he escaped injury. He was a corporal with the 60th Heavy Battery, which first moved to France on the 14th of June 1916. He died in the Somme area of the Western Front on the 22nd of April 1917 from wounds he received as a result of enemy gas shell fire.
Very, very emotional experience, I think. And, you know, to find out where we went today, you know, that, you know, 6,000 people in one day, it's absolutely amazing, the numbers involved. I've always promised myself that I would visit my grandfather's grave at some time. One of those things you always think you're going to do and you never do. Time, and when you get retired, you then find that time. And this opportunity came up because of Thame Remembers.
I'd like to thank the community in Thame for welcoming me on that very special trip. Well, that's all from us. Now more with Tom Hepworth.